Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it. So excited to have the very talented Dena Ackerman on our show today. She is an artist, an illustrator, a teacher, and is one of the pioneers. Again, I think that you always got to find your special niche. No one rocks the LinkedIn and Facebook in the Jewish art world like she does, and it's amazing. Like, she does these videos where you actually see her draw, and it's just like, wow. I happen to draw a little bit, and it's like watching her. I seriously have regrets that I didn't pursue it more seriously, because it's just amazing what humans can create with a little bit of vision and a lot of training. So in the course of our interview today, we discuss not only creativity and art and the fundamentals of art and how you get good and how you can express your creativity. We also go into a little bit, I would call it religion, a little bit of concepts about keeping our spirituality fresh and updated, which is something that she's very much invested in and working in, because she's illustrating these books that are going to be educating our children. And in addition, we speak about this whole concept of God's involvement in our life and how to expect it and how to experience it and channeling it and where's it come from. So I think that there's a lot in this interview, and I'm very excited. And with no further ado, Dena Ackerman, tell me a little bit about how you got into art and also how you use art to advance, I guess, awareness of spirituality.
Okay. I got into art, I don't know, since I was a kid. So I've just always been drawing and painting. And my parents would send me to art lessons because they saw that I was just, always doing it, and that I guess I must have been pretty good at it back then. So I haven't been formally trained. I haven't gone to an art school, but so I say self-taught. Yeah, no, I try to keep learning. So,
So, but I think that we need to, I think it helps other people understand when you hear self-taught, I'm thinking, you're scribbling on napkins from time to time, but like in the process of your training yourself, what was the process like? Was there set hours? How much drawing during every day were you doing? Like, what was that like?
Oh, so I don't know. I was the type who was always drawing on my notes in school, and I was always on weekends. I would sit in my room and draw, and I would, people would come to me to draw their book report covers, and I was just like always drawing. So it's interesting because I just heard this concept about the 10,000 hour rule. Yeah. So, I don't know about the exact number of hours, but like, I feel like if you added up all my hours since I was a kid, that I don't know how many.
You got that 10 grand there.
But like, I got a lot of hours in. And I think that's really like the main thing is just practice. Like I teach adult students, and I have them for 1 or 2 hours a week. And I tell them if they're not practicing at home, they're just not going to really move that quickly. And, so the more time you put in, I guess.
When did you start to feel, tell me also what's really exciting about what you're doing is that you're a professional and you're able to get paid for doing work that you love to do and that expresses you. And I think that that's sort of, at least, I don't know in the Holy Land of Israel, but certainly in America, that's one of those things that's highly sought after. So tell me a little bit about how that process worked for you, and maybe, some practical tips, if you would, that maybe you wish you would have known at the beginning of your process.
Okay. The process of turning it into a career?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually never really thought of it as a career. As a kid, I was always encouraged. Like, I hear a lot of artists saying that their parents discouraged them because they would say artists don't make money, go get a real job. Right. But no one ever told me that. But for some reason, I never looked at it as a career until like about maybe 7 or 8 years ago, when I got my first illustration job through a friend who knew an author who was getting a book published, a children's book. And they asked me to do some samples, which I did, and the publishers liked it. And so that was my first children's book. And then from there, it just kind of, I don't know, snowballed in word of mouth. And I would send people samples, publishers, or, I guess people would refer me to other people. And it just sort of grew that way.
What's it like seeing your art on, I mean, one of the things also I want to call a lot of attention to is the amazing work that you do on LinkedIn, because you're like, it's like a kind of a breath of fresh air that you have all this kind of like dry business stuff. And then we see your drawings and stuff like that, which is very nice. But what's it like, that process of seeing your art in a publication, out there, and kind of, do you feel like you lose, I guess, ownership over it? Does it feel like it's still a part of you when you're drawing, or once it kind of goes out there, then it becomes like part of the public domain?
Oh, that's interesting. No, I don't. I feel like it's fun to see my stuff published, and sometimes if it's something I'm actually proud of, like, I don't get tired of looking at it. But then there are other things I've done that if it's been a long time ago and I've really made progress since then, so I just see a lot of mistakes that I've done, and then it's not as much fun to look at it anymore. But it's fun. Yeah, I enjoy it. And as far as LinkedIn, it's funny. I think I have an unfair advantage because all I have to do is put up a picture, and it's easy to see it.
Just something else I think it's kind of interesting, and as an art teacher, maybe you can speak to this, but could the process of art, the process of being creative, I think that there's a certain stereotype that the creatives are in one category where there's just like unlimited freedom and they can do sort of whatever they want. And then there's everybody else that, has this very rigid, regimented job, and you have to fill out reports and stuff like that. But one of the things I found is actually, I'm sure Rabbi Gottlieb in Jerusalem, right? A rabbi who I was listening to him, and he was saying that, good artists have a lot of science behind them. There's a lot of actual like hard technique, and really good scientists have a lot of art in that they have to have that openness and creativity. So perhaps you could speak a little bit about, is there a wrong way to draw, and how you can see your art developing over your career?
Is there a wrong way to draw? Yeah, I think there is. Which is why, like, I've heard artists talk about this 10,000 hour rule, or just getting practice in. So they will say there's a difference between just practicing and drawing things your way, which might be the wrong way, and actually doing like deliberate practice, maybe copying master artists or copying drawings that are done by, professionals, which will actually train your brain and train your hands to do things in the right way. And some people will argue with me, and they'll say any art is good art, and as long as you're expressing yourself, you're doing okay. That's art. You
don't look at it like that, though.
No,
I love
there
that.
is a lot of science to it, and like I took recently a composition course online with the Academy of Composition, which I would recommend to anybody. And it was fascinating, showing how master artists and master illustrators have a real science of the way they compose their artwork, so that it not only looks pretty or powerful, but tells a story. And to different elements, there's like a ton of planning that goes into your work before you actually put a paintbrush onto your canvas.
I think that as someone that happens to watch a lot of cooking shows, I think that that's a similar thing with chefs, where if we would drop you in a room, your work would look a certain way before you even know what you're drawing, because there's a lot of technical skill that goes into actually building the painting or the illustration that's independent of the subject. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. The subject influences it to some point,
of course.
But you have to have technical skill. You have to know how to draw and paint, first of all. And I think even abstract artists, I think there's technique and there's skill involved to some extent.
Sure, Picasso would be highly offended by that.
Well, if you look at Picasso's early work,
right.
He painted he painted realism and more representational art, and then he moved into his more abstract art later on. But he had the same solid foundation that all other kind of master artists had. So he made a deliberate choice.
I think that is such a crucial point for people to recognize, is that we all sort of want to go into that flow state of, I'm just, gonna compose music or draw stuff. And you always try to cite those, eccentric people that are able to create all this stuff. But the reality is, like, long before they were doing that stuff, they could do all of the technical stuff that you think is boring, that you don't want to do. That's a very important point.
Yeah, I would think so.
Why do people come to you? I mean, besides the fact that you're great, what are you seeing with adults that want to learn how to draw? Like, why are they doing that?
So there's some of them that want to, I guess, some of them have some kind of natural inclination and they're actually good at it and they have, like you would say, natural talent. And some are totally clueless and are actually seem like frightened every time they have to put their pencil on the paper. Like they're afraid to make a mistake or do it wrong. Funny, like they want to turn it into a career.
Okay.
Like my illustration course that I teach is more like, practical based in how to illustrate books and things like that. But then there's just drawing and painting courses. Some people come for fun or to relax or because they have a skill that they want to develop. So I think there's all different types of people.
And you would advise people, I'm assuming, that having a creative outlet is actually important because it does stimulate different parts of your mind than just, reading or watching something.
Yeah, I think so. And even the ones who come in and know nothing and are afraid to, make a mistake. And I tell them it's just practice, just do it. And if it doesn't look good, it's okay because you're learning something from the process, But I can see at the end of the year that everybody makes progress and they all can produce something that they're proud of. So that's fun.
That's
really
amazing.
Enjoy that part.
That's amazing. And it's also nice to be able to have something that's outside of, let's say, your work where you can actually see that you're getting better at something, because I think that that's also an important component of life.
Yeah, when I have to teach them, it forces me to review things and to kind of understand my own process because I have to explain it to somebody else.
You are living in Jerusalem. You are, yes. I think, involved with a lot of the spiritual education and sharing some cool ideas. What is the connection between is there a connection perhaps between what you do with art and your creativity and how you teach or Jewish concepts that you think are relevant to the world at large?
So when I'm teaching it, I don't really have that element in it. It's just mostly technical skill and, building people's abilities. But in my illustration work, I often work for Jewish publishers specifically. So sometimes they'll have a message and or certain historical characters I've illustrated, like Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, and I've illustrated Sarah Stier. Is there
a lot of pressure to get that right?
So it's interesting. I just recently had there's a book review coming out of my Sarah Stier book. And the author sort of the woman who wrote the review sort of warned me that it was mostly positive, but there was one negative part of the review, which was that my character, Sarah Schneer, doesn't look like the photographs that we have of her. She wasn't like the most attractive person.
Right.
And so the woman who wrote the review thought maybe it's a good idea to show other children that you don't have to be beautiful in order to make an impression on the world and to have an impact, which is certainly true. But when you're drawing a character for a kid's book, I felt like it had to have a certain appeal, and you don't have the chance to present yourself in person. Sometimes people are very charming and wonderful in person, even if they're not physically attractive. But when you're just looking at a picture of a character in a book, and they're not appealing, I feel like the book's just not going to sell as, I don't know. I tend to flatter my subjects anyway. So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I don't remember what the original question was.
We're somewhat going into a different path, but I think it's such a fascinating concept that, I am very much invested in the idea, and I'm sure you're also in the idea that Judaism is kind of eternally relevant and has to be, not God forbid, changed, but presented in a way that is exciting for the next generation. And I think that concept is crucial because as we move into a more visually I don't know what to call it. There's just more visual stimulation out there. You have the colors and the media and all this kind of stuff. It's like we have to make our heroes look, again, like you said, it's like a photograph doesn't capture your essence. So you could have someone that does have a tremendous, I'm forgetting the English word, but it's whatever that word is, the
like
appeal,
the charm, or
the charm that you can't necessarily pick up from just a photograph. And there's sort of like, I guess, an artistic license that you feel is important to be able to show that person as having that, I guess you could say, that joyous spark of life that comes out even if the photograph doesn't. And I wonder the psychology behind, I guess I can understand the psychology behind why someone wants it to look the way it's always looked. I wonder if they realize that it's like, that doesn't work. You know what I mean?
It wouldn't translate. It really wouldn't.
Right.
But what I did was I looked very closely at whatever photographs were available of her. There's only like 2 or 3. And I tried to take the features, and she's an older woman also in these characters, and I was drawing her more as like a teenager and a young woman. And I think also like younger women have that like natural freshness that they lose when they get older. So I was trying to imagine what she might have looked like when she was younger and take certain features that I could, and I tried to make her similar as possible, but just give her like, you know, that youthful kind of appeal that young girls or whatever families, whoever's reading these books, would enjoy looking at.
Right.
You know?
That's what I'm saying. That's you want to feel, you know, I had this crazy experience. This is the first time I'm speaking about it publicly. I had this crazy experience when I went to yeshiva. I'm from California, and I like to work out. And I remember coming to yeshiva and one of the rabbis making a comment like, you know, oh, that's not, you know, whatever it was, you know, that's not a Jewish, whatever thing. And it really sort of created a schism in my mind between, okay, this is what I'm doing as an Orthodox Jew. An Orthodox Jew should look like a frail rabbi and be old, right? and then there's me, and I'm like, well, I think that Arnold Schwarzenegger looks fantastic. So the interesting thing though is I read a piece by Rav Kook later, and he said that frail look is actually like exiled Jews. And he said, if you look at the original Jews, right, they were big, strong warriors. And
like you don't see the biblical Jews in illustrations as like pale, frail.
Yeah, and all the matriarchs are all beautiful, and you know, it's like, and so it's funny because I think as a Jewish culture, we on one hand want to try to immortalize the past, but a lot of the past that we're immortalizing is just kind of reflective, not of the true personalities. It was just like, it was hard times. There was no makeup back then, you know, it was like life sucked and everyone was pretty poor. So that's a fascinating point. One thing you also mentioned in kind of our pre-interview discussion was that you're very passionate about showing like divine guidance in one's life, or that concept. And I think in a world where so many people are like, okay, like, show me the proof. You know, I believe in my shoes because I can see them. Why should I believe in Shabbos or God? Like, these kind of concepts are very important. So what does divine providence mean to you, or what's your experience been with that you feel is important for other people to hear?
I just see it in my personal life. Like,
tell me more.
I'll be going through something, and I'll be like, and I talk to God, and I pray, and I'm like, listen, you love me like a father, right? If I was talking to my real father and he could give me whatever I wanted, he would give it to me. And God, I feel like, you know, he can do whatever he wants, and he's my dad. And so I'll ask him, and like, if it's good for me, he'll give it to me. So like, I'll have my list of things, and I'll be like, I need it to be like this. I need it to happen at this time. And like, you know, this is what, you know, you love me, so you'll do it for me. And it doesn't always work out that way. And sometimes usually works out even better. And I'll look back at the things I asked for, and I'll see what actually happened. And I'll be like, wow, you just like worked that out for me in a way that I didn't even think about, you know, when I was asking for what I wanted. That happens to me.
Could I stop you and just ask a couple follow-up questions about that so far? Because, you know, what you're saying is in a lot of ways, it's a very classically not to say it's, you know, it's, I mean, like,
I'm sure it is.
I'm saying it's a very Jewish thing that we speak to God as if he's in our lives. Like, it's a good idea that God should be a part of our lives. How did you start with that concept of like the simple faith that, you know, a lot of times we look at our ancestors. I remember my mom saying my grandma used to do that. And we look at our ancestors, I'm not saying I don't do that. I'm just saying you brought it up. But we look at our ancestors, and on one hand, it's a level of, you know, I think we make a big mistake and we think that maybe our ancestors were not as sophisticated as we are today. But I think another thing that we look back at our ancestors that we really admire is that their Judaism was real. and their Judaism was very much a part of their life. And it sounds like you've been able to cultivate that. So how did that happen for you, and what was that process like?
Probably just the way I grew up. My father happens to be a rabbi, and he was involved with outreach. So we had a lot of people around, and I would overhear their discussions. And so it was a lot of talk about God. And then my mom was the type of person who, like, when we're driving to our dentist appointment, and we have 5 minutes and she couldn't find a parking spot, and she would be just like, please, God, find us a parking spot. Please, God, find us a parking spot. So, like, we learned, like, any little thing that you need, you ask God. And, like, I do that with my kids, too. Like, if the internet goes down and they want to use the computer, so I'm like, you got to daven it, you got to pray. So we'll sit there and go, please, God, turn the internet back on. So
now, some people might say, and I want to point this out, and I always like when someone else says it so I don't sound nuts, but you have the creator of the world that built glaciers. I don't know why that's so impressive, but glaciers are molecular structure, and it's like, or there are people that are in a hospital somewhere and, like, pleading for their life, or all these massive problems, and we're praying for our internet to hold up or to find a parking space. What would you say to someone that would say, like, do you think God actually cares about all these little minutiae in your life?
Yeah, I kind of think he does. I mean, I don't know where the source is, but it says, like, every blade of grass has, like, an angel that tells it.
The Talmud says that. The Gemara in Brachos says that. Yes. Yeah,
I mean, so if God is overseeing every blade of grass growing, then I'm sure he cares about whether I find a parking spot or, whatever. And we even have a prayer, when you lose an object, they have a special prayer, and then you give charity. And I've tried that quite a number of times, and it actually works.
Crazy.
So, like, I see it. I mean, I do think he cares. Yeah.
So that's a beautiful concept that a lot of times I think that it's, and not to go into the psychology of it, but because our society is so general and a lot of people feel unheard and not important and are sort of looking for that validation, the idea that the creator would give you that validation and actually cares where you park or how your internet connection is, in a lot of ways it seems far away. But on the other hand, it's like, that's the most beautiful thing in the world. If, like, God cares so much about you that he just, like, practically wants you to be happy, and you're not just some expendable piece like a cow in a countryside somewhere. Yeah. It's a very beautiful idea.
Yeah. If he cares enough to, like, heal you from a sickness or provide you with a livelihood or, the big things that you need in life, and he cares enough to take care of that, what's the difference for him if he's, giving you $100 or giving you helping you find your phone charger that you lost,
This losing theme, I think, with people with young children is kind of ongoing. So you have to get,
probably.
Yeah, it's like I'll interview someone. Right, exactly. You're right. I'm trying to interview someone and I pull up a crayon and I'm like, oh, great, this isn't going to work. Anyway, okay, that's amazing. So, Dena, please tell. Unfortunately, we have to close it out for this time, but hopefully we'll do again. Please tell people how they can find out more about you, your classes, your illustration, the best way to find you on social media, etc.
Okay, thank you. I have a website. It's my name, Dena, Dena, Ackerman.com. I'm on Facebook, Art by Dena. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, also Art by Dena. And I teach here in Ramat Beit Shemesh, adults.
I'm so jealous of the fact you live there. That place is like my favorite spot on earth. It's really great.
Yes, so cool. Yeah. It's nice here.
Amazing. So I know people wanted to find out more about your classes. What? Just find you through social?
Yeah, they could contact me. I work at a small art school here.
Beautiful. Amazing.
So that's where I teach 3 mornings a week. So they're welcome to be in touch with me. Yeah.
Great. Amazing. Dena, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.